Welcome to War Talk with Nick as your host. Early this somber morning, post-bombing of Pearl Harbor. With the event that shut the United States into shock, silence, and uproar over Japan's betrayal, everyone wants to know what is fact and what is fiction. How many casualties are there? Who was involved and targeted? And even more simply, the fact of what just happened. Hopefully all these questions get answered and clears up the fog of the confusion. Today we have three special guests with us to help shed some light on this touchy subject. We have John Delmar Anderson, a survivor from the USS Arizona, and Paulina Howard, a field nurse who was a first responder to those horrifically massacred. Here's John Delmar Anderson joining us on the air now.
I awoke on the morning of December 7th. I had the duty in the 4th Division, and the division was clean up any activity we had going and to arrange the ceremonies for our church on the fantail of the ship. So I took my working party and we commenced to do all this sort of thing. And we were a little late getting into the mess hall for breakfast. So we got this straightened out and we went inside to eat. And about the time I got inside to get a chance to eat something, I heard a loud explosion. And I thought, what the dickens is that? And then one of the mess cooks looked out the porthole and saw the explosion and called me. And he said, "Andy, you were in China just recently." "Well, yes." "Well, you know what it was? Did you see that?" And I said, "No." He said, "Get out here and take a look." So I went outside the hatch onto the main quarterdeck, looked up and saw this plane with dipping like this, and it had red balls on its wings. And I said, said a cuss word, and I said, "The Japanese are here. We already knew this was going to happen sometime, but they're here." And so I ran back toward the hatch door to pull the general alarm. And about the time I got to pull it, which I never did, a bomb dropped between us and the vessel. And it blew me inside the hatch, knocked me silly. And of course, that set off a wildfire. And of course, the Japanese were then machine gunning the decks, spraying the decks with machine gun fire. Then more bombs began to drop around us. And of course, we immediately did what we were supposed to do, go to our general quarters station. So I got up off the deck, went down to the lower hatches and back up into the barbette of number 4 turret, because I was a gunner on my battle station in number 4 turret. And I got into the seat and said, "Manned and ready." In the meantime, I told the turret captain, Campbell, I said, "Look, what I saw out there was a number of Japanese planes. I didn't see any ships or anything, and no shell fire. There's all bombs and machine gun fire." And he said, "Well, what do you suggest?" And I said, "Well, we can't do any good in here. We need some gunners on the anti-aircraft batteries. And if those guys are dead, who's going to defend us from those planes up there?" And he says, "Well, what do you want to do?" And I said, "I'd like to get out there and get on a gun with my brother. He's an anti-aircraft gun captain, and he needs help." And he said, "Go for it." So I said, "Okay." So I talked to a couple other guys that was in there with me, Hog Otterman and Dwayne Barth and a fellow named Lewis and several other guys. I said, "I'm going out the trap door and I'm going up there and get on the guns. If you guys want to stay here, you can do that and man this turret. If they start shelling us, I'll come back. So I won't be gone that long." So I got out of the turret, went out from the overhang of the turret, and started up the ladder to the boat deck where all the anti-aircraft guns were. Well, I got to the top of the ladder, and an enormous explosion occurred, and people were just blown all over the place. There was all kinds of body parts, different. There was nothing I could do to do anything, and a tremendous fire broke out.
Here's some numbers we have for you on the bombing. The battle only lasted about 2 hours. Nearly 20 American vessels and 200 airplanes were destroyed. 2,402 people have been killed. Another 1,247 have been wounded for the United States, and 64 have been killed for the Japanese. We'll be right back here on War Talk after these messages.
You know, Aunt Jemima, your pancakes make the whole family happy, especially the ladies.
Well, Mr. May, the ladies know how easy my pancakes are to fix.
Easy as 1, 2, 3.
Just add milk or water and pop 'em on the griddle, and they're ready to serve.
And your Aunt Jemimas are so tender, so delicious, so easy to digest.
Yes, sir. Just as digestible as toast. That's why folks I know eat 'em for breakfast, lunch, or supper.
Yes, right around the clock, Aunt Jemimas are enjoyable, satisfying, good eating. Mmm. Why, their tantalizing fragrance makes your mouth water.
That's 'cause they're made according to my own secret recipe.
Right, and your secret recipe pancakes, Aunt Jemima, are the only pancakes with that genuine Old South flavor.
So look here, ladies, for an easy-to-fix treat, ask your grocer today for the regular-sized box of Aunt Jemima ready-mixed pancake flour. Or for economy, get the 3.5-pound family-size bag.
And now we're back, and we have a special guest, a nurse from the front, who had to see it all. Her name is Paulina, and she is here to tell us about the horrors she had to endure while saving the brave souls that fought to their end.
Hi, how you doing? It's morning time and my friends who are nurses as well, we're all sleeping under a late night. We wake up to a roaring in the sky, and my friend Marie looks out the window towards the postcard-perfect ocean that we see every morning. At first she thought it was just a dream, for she saw a blaze as big as if hell had opened up. She wiped the sleep from her eyes and looked again and was astounded to the fact that the blaze was still going over the harbor. She screams and wakes all of us up and tells us to get dressed and look out at the harbor. We all looked outside and saw the smoke as thick as a blanket and fire engulfing our Navy ships. I break my gaze from the harbor and look up at the sky and see planes flying around in the sky. They were the Japs. They buzzed around over the harbor like bees over a flower. They dropped torpedo after torpedoes and let hell fall on our nation's men. No longer entranced by the scene that lay so close to our home, I gathered our senses and we went into professional mode and ran to the hospital.
Wow, that is quite a way to wake up in the morning. What did you do when you guys made it to the hospital?
We rushed in and it was complete chaos. Doctors were running around, other nurses were crying. Everyone was losing their cool. We sprung into action, moving patients from the windows with mattresses covering them. God forbid we ever became under attack. The line in the ER was massive, with men covered with blood, clutching severed limbs, and just begging to be put out of their agony. Patient after patient stained the sterile white walls of the hospital with their blood, symbolic of the struggles that they had fighting for their country, and how staining this horrific event will be in their mind, if they are lucky enough to survive. Morphine was not used to help cure, it was used to make dying a little easier. We couldn't do much, the damage was that bad. Wounded men were sprawled over the hallways, in the kitchens, and in the waiting rooms. Amputations and simple surgeries were done in those places, too. There was not much we can do. We basically were the last faces these men would see before their life passed. So we were the ones that held their hands and said a prayer for them, and reminded them that the world wasn't all bad, that the cruel swiftness that their life had been taken was not all a loss.
That is so touching. I'm glad to hear that there are good souls in the world we live in today. How did you deal with the stress and the anxiety?
Simply by staying focused on what I was doing. I refused to look at the growing line of soldiers. I focused on the guy I was helping. He was expecting my full performance and to do what I'm trained to do, and I performed. Sure, I would love to get the blank stares of the dead and the immense amount of blood out of my head. It is prolonged anxiety that will never leave me.
So very true. Thank you so much for sharing your very touching story with us, Paulina.
My pleasure.
Now, after this commercial break, we will discuss predictions that we will have following the bombing of Pearl Harbor.
Aha, Coach. So that's what keeps you on your toes.
Could be. Bromo Seltzer's mighty refreshing any time, and every athlete knows it's a faster way to get relief when a headache teams up with a cold.
Right, Coach. I'm learning.
Bromo Seltzer can teach you something about timing, too, lad. Watch how quickly Bromo Seltzer dissolves as it fizzes in the glass. See? Bromo Seltzer dissolves before your eyes, ready to swing right into action. Yes, and Bromo Seltzer acts fast 3 ways at once. 1, relieves headache. 2, helps settle upset stomach. 3, calms tense nerves, which often accompany headache. No wonder athletes find Bromo Seltzer's alkaline action and 3-way relief a speedy way to defeat headache in a hurry. Get Bromo Seltzer today. Keep it on hand in home or office. Then, before headache makes a cold doubly hard to bear, Try refreshing Bromo Seltzer. You feel better 3 ways fast.
With all the events that happened yesterday, President Roosevelt will most likely take action on the matter very soon. My colleagues and I have been discussing what we believe Roosevelt will do. After endless discussion, we all believe that President Roosevelt will have to declare war on Japan. We know the U.S. will be getting into a world war being fought in Europe. We are now going to open the lines for callers to give their take on what they think Roosevelt should do or if they saw anything yesterday. Call us at 1-800-WAR-TALK. We'll be taking as many callers as we can. Here's our first caller. You're live on War Talk. What's your name?
Hi, my name's Tim. How are you?
Hey, Tim, I'm good. Can you tell us if you saw anything yesterday or what you think the president should do?
Yeah, I live only a few miles away from the harbor, and I started to hear very loud noises. I didn't know where they were coming from or what they were, so I walked outside and I saw massive airplanes shooting at all the battleships. I did not understand what was going on at that time. There were explosions going off everywhere, and it was like turned to cement. I was in complete shock of what was happening. Then I saw a plane start shooting at the hospital, and I came to the realization that we were under attack. I ran inside and woke my wife up, and I told her to look out the window to see what was happening. She couldn't believe what she was seeing either, so we both sort of panicked and, well, didn't know what to do. So we ran in the basement to try to get away from the line of fire. We waited in the basement listening to the radio for about 2 hours. Then I went upstairs to see if everything ended. I looked outside and saw all the destruction that just took place, and I couldn't grasp that it actually happened. So, I definitely agree that Roosevelt should declare war. Don't think he has other choices.
Wow, thanks for that story. It really gives our viewers a sense of what this actually felt like. After the short break, we'll be taking more calls, and we will have more on the attack that took place at Pearl Harbor yesterday.
Wings! You can bank on Wings, Canada's top-flight Virginia cigarette. Better tobaccos, better paper, better made. For a mild, smooth, satisfying smoke, join the swing to Wings. Wings. Join the swing to Wings and discover for yourself the extra mildness of this better Virginia cigarette. For flavor, smoothness, and sky-high smoking pleasure, you can bank on Wings.
Welcome back to War Talk. Here with Nick talking about attack on Pearl Harbor. We've heard some very interesting stories today. We've talked to a nurse that had to try to help so many yesterday. We've heard from a soldier in battle, and we just heard from a local resident talking about how he couldn't believe what happened. We're now going to bring in our White House/political expert, Matilda. Matilda, what is your take on yesterday's events?
We all know that what happened yesterday was devastating and very hard to picture why it would happen. Many of my colleagues see the attack as rebellion against the oil embargo that was put in place against Japan. We understood that Japan relied on the U.S. for iron, steel, and especially oil. This embargo was a restriction of strategic materials. What I feel is that Japan planned the attack when the U.S. intensified the embargo and froze all the oil being shipped to Japan. Due to this horrific event, we believe that President Roosevelt later today will announce war on Japan. Congress has to approve the declaring of war, and then the President will announce it to the public. As of now, this is all we know. We will have to wait and see what happens as the day goes on.
Thank you, Matilda. Again, we believe the United States will declare war on Japan. We will be on the air throughout the day if anything happens. Thanks to all the guests we had, including John Delmar Anderson, Nurse Paulina, the local resident Tim, and our White House expert Matilda. This is Nick saying goodbye for now. Thank you for listening to War Talk. Check in if any news happens.